Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Upside.com, a new way to buy business travel. Upside bundles your flights and hotel together for one low price. That saves your company so much money, they're able to reward you in the form of popular gift cards every time you buy a trip. Visit Upside.com and use promo code TRIP to get at least a $100 Amazon gift card the first time you buy a trip. Save on business travel and get a gift card every time. Minimum purchase required. See Upside.com promo code TRIP for complete details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Peace, everyone. How you doing? Welcome to the Huddle 3 with Israel Doctrine. I'm your host, Carl Lambert, and you have now entered into the Huddle 3. And today we got a co-host, Brother Drew. Peace. How you doing, Brother Drew?
Everything is good, Brother Lafayette. Peace and blessings to everybody out there.
Yeah, so Drew going to be co-hosting tonight. He know more about this brother and the subject matter than me. And he actually asked me, if everything was good to come over here and do the show tonight, and everybody know I'm not prejudiced against anybody getting a message out there. So I was like green light, I just green lighted it. So I'm gonna let him introduce the brother. I don't know if he's on the line with him or if he's gonna be calling in, but I'm gonna let him introduce the brother and tell y'all a little bit more about the situation, seeing that he's more of a specialist on it than me. And then we're gonna give an interview or take an interview and have the brother answer some questions after an hour or so. But we're going to most definitely make sure that he get his message out there, his story out there, and we're going to have a good night. So, Drew, you're the man now.
Well, all right. First I want to say Lafayette, peace, Hotep, Shalom, Salam Alaikum, whatever your greeting is, how y'all doing, what's happening. I want to give a shout out to you first, brother, before we get this show started. Because, Brother Carl, are you a Hebrew Israelite? What do you follow? I want to let the people know who you are. Cause
I just use the term Israelite, but most people will call me a Christian because I follow Christ to the T in love and respect for all humanity.
Okay. Well, I just want to give you a shot before we get started because you always open up your door to everybody and you give everybody an open mic and you let everybody express themselves and you don't condemn anyone for what they believe in. It's like you open your show up to anybody and that's what's happening. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. And the brother that we're bringing on the show tonight, he is the king of Oyotunji village. And if anybody out there don't know about Oyotunji village is the oldest authentic African village in the United States of America. And it's been there for 40 years. It's been there so long. They made movies there like Roots. Most of our political leaders that so-called conscious have been there. I've seen Mutu Baraka on videos, Umar Johnson, everybody has been there. But we want to bring the king on, the Oba. Oba means king in the Yoruba language. We want to bring the Oba on and let him explain what it is so the people can find out about this village because it's been here for so long, for 40 years. And I was down there 2 weeks ago, and, man, it was something that I haven't experienced. I really felt like I was in Africa. It was so beautiful. The people there are so cultural. It's like you would think that you would have to go back to Africa just to experience this. But this is right here in America, on the East Coast, in the South. Like I keep saying, it's been here for 40 years, so it ain't no new flash in the pan type thing. It ain't like no Disney World type thing where you just got actors out here just dressed up looking like, no, this is a lifestyle. This is the way they live. But is the Oba on the phone?
Nah, he haven't made it yet on the call. I don't know if he got the exact number or know exactly what to do. But I'm interested in hearing his story. Because like you said, there's a lot of history there.
Okay, let me see what's happening with the Oba. We got to get him on here. But this village is so authentic to where if you just look at the video, it's on YouTube. Just YouTube Oyotunji Village, OYOTUNJI Village, African village, and it will break it down for you. But let me see what's going on with the brother, because we got to get him on there and keep it going. So how you been doing today, though, brother?
It's good. It's good. It's about 90-some degrees, so no complaining, though.
True.
No
Man, it was so hot here. I'm at the dirty, so you know it's hot down here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me make sure he has the right number. I had texted him my house number. I'm sorry, say it again, brother.
305, that's the number?
Yeah, 305, yeah. He owned it, that's him.
Yeah, that's him. Peace, how you doing, brother?
Yes, greetings, my good brothers there in Jacksonville. How are you this evening?
Oh, we good.
Am I coming through okay?
Oh, yeah, you coming through okay. Glad to have you on the show tonight, brother.
Oh, very happy to be here. Extremely happy to be here and express what I can regarding and articulating African culture and tradition.
Well, normally here on the Huddle, when doing things like this, basically we just do an interview and a open mic. So we start our interviews off with basically, telling us about your life story, somewhat from childhood up to this point, and we know however broad you want to make it.
Okay, wonderful. That sounds exciting. Well, if I talk about myself, it'll be over in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. However, in the African, within the confines of the African worldview, one always views themselves as themselves, their ancestor, and those who came before them. So basically, you are your ancestors. So I always have to start with the story of my ancestors. We all have the same collective story in terms of ancestry. We all were brought from Africa, stolen from Africa, and we came here together with our culture and tradition, which was taken. And so we are all connected. We're all connected in that regard, and we'll continue to be connected for eternity. And so my ancestors saw to it that African people in North America can have a connectivity device. Okay, what I mean by a connectivity device is that they utilize the African culture and the African religion, spirituality, and worldview in order to devise a way for African people to communicate and work together. And so I know I travel around the world, around the United States, and the United States seems to have seem to be the place with the least appreciation for African culture and African religion and the African worldview. However, the United States has benefited the most from the African genius and the African worldview. Record companies benefit today from the African genius, whereby people sign up for record companies and they're abused and taken advantage of. The culinary arts in America has abused African culture in that they have taken facets from African culture or food and cuisine and have not given credit. And so when I speak in terms of my ancestors, my father was born in 1928, and he realized at the age of 12, okay, this is 1940, he realized that African people in North America didn't have the culture that they originated from, okay? So what he did was he asked his mother, who was in the church in the 1940s, he said, where is the African God? Where are the African holidays? What do African black people celebrate? And, of course, his mother could not answer that in the 1940s. So he saw to it that he was going to go forward and open itself up to the spirits and open itself up to the universe. Because one who takes time and look around and see the situation that African people are in the diaspora comes to one conclusion. And that conclusion is that African people are a dynamic people in the West, but we are without our culture. And so my father sought to, at the tender age of 12, he sought to dig out and find the culture and religion of the West African people. Most of his knowledge was book knowledge. From 12 years old until he was 24, 25, most of his knowledge was book knowledge. Okay? And so he read many books. Marcus Garvey, of course, his parents was a part of the Marcus Garvey movement, which influenced him, influenced my father. And so my father would go to various meetings in Detroit, Michigan, where he was born. He would go to meetings with his father. They would go to Garvey meetings. They would go to meetings with Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple. And my father was opened at a tender age of 14 to African black nationalism in North America. So his parents also wanted to join the Garvey movement and go back to Africa. You know, there was a large movement of Africa in the 20s, 30s, leading up to the 40s. And so once the wars began to happen in North America, the constant wars that the North Americans continued to propagate, the wars happened. And so my father found himself in New York around that time. And so once the wars happened, the interest for Africa and the interest for all of the Marcus Garvey movement began to wane, and the country took on another approach. And everyone bought in to the idea that the country was at war, when in all actuality, it was just a few corporations at war. However, my father decided that he would continue to join the spirits, because the universe was telling him, look, you need to find your African ancestry, you need to find your culture, you need to know your people. And so from book knowledge, as he read various books, and you got to imagine that there were no books on Africa, no books about African culture or where black people came from in the 1940s. And however, he ran across a magazine, a National Geographic magazine, that had some pictures in it. And him and his friend became known as the Voodoo Twins in the 1940s, because they were always talking about Africa, 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 black people, Africa, black people, Africa. And so time moves on, and he joined the Catherine Dunham Dance Theater. Catherine Dunham was a prolific African-American dancer. He joined her theater and traveled to around the world. They sailed around the world. And when he finally arrived in Haiti, or as Haitian people call it, Haiti, when he arrived in Haiti, he realized and had the first glimpse and the first visual of African traditional culture. Okay, and so he had his first glimpse of African traditional culture through the guise of Dambalafuedo. Dambalafuedo is the African deity that's still venerated today. The African deity that represents the ancestors, those ancestors whose names we do not know. Quite namely, those ancestors who jumped off of the boat in the Middle Passage. And Dambalafuedo encompasses, or the veneration of Dambalafuedo encompasses all of those African people. Okay, so my father understood African religion through Haiti. Haiti was his first exposure. And you have to remember, Haiti was the first free African nation in the West. You know, African people took Haiti from the Westerners, from the French, and they used their voodoo, they used their culture, they used the power of the ancestors to overcome the oppression of slavery and the oppression of the Europeans. And it's very sad today that their efforts to be free and to be freedom fighters is not supported by America, because America propagates itself as a country that's about freedom and freedom fight as well. You got these Haitians that fought slavery hand and foot. However, we do not go there and participate in their continued success as an independent nation, as Americans or as America. And so the government of America will stand trial for that eventually. However, my father realized through Haiti the African culture, came back to America and opened the first traditional Yoruba or traditional temple dedicated to the worldview, the sciences, the culture, and religion of Africa. That was called the Order of Dang Balawedo. That was established in 1956 in Harlem, New York. However, during that time was the civil rights, so my father would go out on the streets of Harlem on what we call a soapbox and speak to people in terms of African culture and enlighten people as in terms of the sociology, the spirituality, and the culture of African people. And so they said, you know, he drew a lot of crowds. He drew a lot of crowds because he was articulating, my father that is, he was articulating the black people's plight in North America from a totally different paradigm than was Louis Farrakhan, Martin Luther King, and all of the other sages of our time and great men of our time. He was articulating Africa, which nobody was doing. People were talking about Arabia, they were talking about Jerusalem, they were talking about all these different places, but no one was articulating the homeland and the intrinsic, by intrinsic I mean the natural culture and religion of these people. And so my father was credited to be the first African-American reinitiated into the culture of the African people in North America. And here at Oyotunji, we regard that as the end of slavery. We regard that as the true end of slavery because emancipation is not just, well, you're free from chains. Emancipation is you're free of dome of thought or freedom. An old man once told me that freedom meant free dome of thought. So you have a free dome. Your dome is free. And so you're free to think according to your worldview. And so my father supplied that for African Americans in New York. They opened up several temples. And eventually he traveled to Cuba, as I said, and became initiated. And that is the point that we regard as our emancipation as African Americans, because since that point on, he was fired up with the energy of Africa, the spirits of Africa, the gods and ancestors of Africa, and he went forth to spread that message through Harlem in the 1950s and 1960s. Okay? And why we say that is the true emancipation, because once a person can practice their own tradition, practice their own religion, practice their own culture, wear their own clothes, dabble in their own cuisine, then that is a truly free people. Every history will tell us that any people who was enslaved never became emancipated by utilizing the culture and the religion of the enslavers. Yeah, it just never worked like that throughout history. And so my father produced African culture and put it on the grand stage for African Americans. Then that is our true emancipation, as we see it here at Oyotunji. So my father built those temples in New York for people. However, coming from Cuba, Cuba was a place where African tradition was kept. African tradition was honored in a fashion that is beyond what we can imagine in North America. Therefore, today, African religion and culture permeates Cuba. So if you go to Cuba, Jay-Z, I think, just got back from Cuba. I'm sure he witnessed African religion while he was there and culture because it's everywhere. The drum is everywhere. The drum was outlawed in North America, or at least in South Carolina, as I know, in 1740. And so they took the drum from us 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay, they took the drum from us almost 400 years ago. Okay? And so my father came back to America, fired up with the African culture, opened temples. However, the Cubans did not necessarily want him to give the culture and the religion to the African Americans, because the Cubans had realized that the African Americans were churched and they were also plantationized beyond belief, beyond any other peoples in North America. So basically the Cubans had understood the black Americans in a short time, because some of the first Cubans came in the 1940s. So they were only here about 20, 30 years as a community and realized that the black Americans were culture and religionless. And so my father was not buying what the Cubans were telling him, because they told him, look, when you get back to America, don't give this religion to the black people. They'd never understand it. They'll bust us in the FBI or break us all up and take everybody to jail. My father was not buying that story. And so he told them, yes, I will conform, I will be quiet. However, once he got back to America, he did the exact opposite. He opened up temples, he had parades, instead of just being quiet about the culture and the religion, he began to make dashikis and dress people in African clothes. He gave them African names. They played African drums. They had ceremonies in public. And you have to understand where the Cubans were coming from, okay, because the Cubans were new immigrants, and they knew that America would not tolerate any African culture. So they were afraid to display the Cuban, African-Cuban culture, you see. And so they arrived in the United States and began the clandestine movement, the beginning of a clandestine movement of African culture, whereby they had festivals and celebrations to the ancestors in basements. Like today, it's normal to go to a festival and see African Orisha and African festivals, the Gullah Festival, Heritage Festival, the Afro Fest, and all of the African festivals around the country. You see the display of African culture, but before that had to be done in basements in the 1950s, 60s, and even 70s. And even today, some people are afraid to practice African tradition. So my father, instead of being spoon-fed the African tradition, he wanted a shovel. And so he focused on Africa because he knew this tradition came from Africa, so he put his sights on Africa, and eventually he came to the thought and the idea that he had to create an African village because they were dabbling in this African religion and culture, which was a nature-based religion. So eventually, you know, any genius, any smart person would realize when you practice in a nature-based religion, you need land. And then around I'm not going to throw out any dates because I'm not doing dates this evening. However, Ghana becomes independent. And when Ghana becomes independent, it sends shockwaves throughout Harlem, shockwaves of independence. So many people in Harlem felt the concept, an idea of independence. And so once Ghana becomes independent, my father realized that if we're going to be a black successful people in North America, we have to have a land base. And we have to build a state. Now, a state is not necessarily what we know as states on the map with boundaries. Well, they do have boundaries. However, the states that we're talking about is a state of government, a system of government. Even Dr. Clark once said that African people will never be free in North America until they create their own system of statehood, whereby they pretty much govern themselves based on a traditional law. Well, not the laws and rules of the oppressor. So my father realized from Ghana's independence, and at the same time, many countries in Africa in the 60s and late 60s were becoming independent, and even in the 50s were becoming independent. And so my father and many African cultural nationalists. Now, an African cultural nationalist is different than just a nationalist. An African cultural nationalist is kind of new on the present scene in North America. It may not be new in the history of North America, but it's new in modern times in that these are nationalists, people thinking about nation and land base who utilize African culture as the foundation, as the mechanism of approach. These African nationalists realized that they needed a land base. And there were also many land-based organizations talking at the same time. Some of them wanted to take over states. Some of them wanted 100 acres. Some of them wanted 50 acres. However, my father knew that if it started with 1 acre, then it would be difficult to deal with 100 acres. So they moved south. They left New York. They left all of the grandeur of the temples and all of the beauty of operating within the confines of an urban setting and headed for the bush of South Carolina. And that is how Oyotunji African Village is born, and that is why I am on the show this evening, to help articulate the history and try to articulate the present and where we go in the future. And so I was crowned. Actually, let's start. We were born, and in the village we say we, us, or we try to stay away from saying I or me too much. So if I say we or us, I'm really saying I or me. So we were born in 1976 here in Oyotunji. So we were born in Oyotunji, of a first generation of African American children born in Oyotunji, or born in America, a first generation of African children born in America with all of the bells and whistles, if you will, of African culture. Most children, black children, are born in America, are born and are delivered and reared according to the oppressors or the slave masters' system. and it's not racist that we use terms like a slave master and oppressor. We're just quoting history. So in history, we have all been raised by the plantation system. Okay? In Oyotunji, the children were the first, my generation and the generation preceding were amongst the first African-American children to be born with all of the trappings of culture, a naming ceremony, all of the trappings of culture, rites of passage, arranged marriages, if at all possible, initiation into African spiritual societies and groups and social philanthropic organizations. So we were initiated at a very young age into many different facets of African culture, many different secret societies. We were initiated young and grew up in the culture. So we grew up here at Oyotunji. We grew up understanding that there's a difference between young and elders. You know, you just don't talk to elders in your way. Elders are to be respected based on their years on the planet and the experience and wisdom that they carry. Even if a person is a day older than you, then they're considered an elder. So Oyotunji provided or provide for African Americans a snapshot of what African traditional cultural life was like pre-slavery. And Oyotunji is just a bit bigger than a basement or a culture center. Oyotunji is situated within the forest. It was situated within nature. There are buildings, there are festivals, there's the king. We have a governing body, there's the king, and that's us, we're the king. And then you have the Ogboni, which are the governing elders. Then you have the priests, and then you have the children, and then you have the elders. Then you have the general fathers and mothers. And so Oyotunji serves for us, as Dr. Smalls once said when he came to Oyotunji. Dr. Smalls was one of the professors speaking in Hidden Colors. When Dr. Smalls came to Oyotunji, he said that Oyotunji provides for us a snapshot of what our communities could be like. We just have to take Oyotunji's model and update it and graft it and mold it for any particular environment. Okay? And so today, we sit as the king of Oyotunji. We were crowned in 2005 here at Oyotunji. We did not crown ourselves, of course. We were crowned by throngs and throngs of African people. Now, my coronation was interesting and different than my father's because my coronation included all sorts of people. It included Muslims, it included Christians, Africans, Rastafarians. The Rastafarian community made an appearance. They all came to support the incoming traditional Yoruba king. And that is because they see the need for self-determination. So I'll close on this and I'll open up for questions or any questions you may have. Oyotunji is basically a monastery where priests can come to learn and study. You can have your ups, your downs, your happy moments, your argument moments. You can have it all within the confines of an African community. And so African people, we deal with conflict different. We deal with everything different because we're starting from a spiritual perspective as opposed to a human perspective. We start from a spiritual, natural perspective. So then Oyotunji is a monastery, and it is a place where African Americans can come debrief from the corporation.
And it's funny that you say that, brother, because when I was down there 2 weeks ago, that was the perspective that I took from it. It was like a monastery. It was like everybody that I met there were either priests, chiefs, on their way to becoming that. It's like a school that it's like, if you want to relate it to like monks, you know what I mean? The monks of China or Hong Kong. It was all African and it was all black. So it's funny that you would say that because that's how I looked at it too. I looked at it was somewhere that you go to perfect yourself, you know? And that was a beautiful thing. And that was a beautiful thing. And everybody, and I'm a realist, so I know it's not a utopia, and everybody is always trying to get themselves together. So that's what it is. It's a school for getting yourself together. Like I always tell people, it's a hospital. Like people talk about the Nation of Islam, and they talk about church, and they talk about all these organizations and stuff that there is. But I have to remind people that this is a hospital for crazy people that's trying to get their lives together. You know what I mean? You're not going to come in here and everybody's going to be perfect. That's anywhere you go. I don't care if you go to the Nation of Islam. I don't care if you join the synagogue. So you're going to always have, people that's not right. But they're getting right. They're in the right place.
Vessels of honor.
If you can understand. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Most definitely. Vessels of honor and dishonor in every great house.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Indeed. And that's one of the things that hinder African people in America from going forward, because we think that everything has to be honorable. Everything is not honorable. African people realize that there is no good, there is no bad. Everything is cause and effect. And so if you do have dishonorable people around or the like or the third, or things are going south and going bad, it's generally a byproduct or an effect of the environment and the permeating culture, the premier culture, which is American culture. So, indeed, that was a good point you say there, Baba, because we've always been taught that, well, if somebody's bad in the movement, then you leave the movement and you go find another movement. And so now that's why you have black people in every single movement all over the country, as opposed to being concentrated in a few powerful movements that actually get things done. And that's the difference with African culture. African culture teaches doing things. No, we can't sit around and wait on God or the ancestors to do things. They will support us in our endeavors. However, we have to get out and build. Our black people, we need to be taught how to build and construct and do and deal with lots of practical things.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I got a question, if I could. So how do y'all deal with social justice there? We had a show all last week on social justice. We did basically a week. If it wasn't last week, it was the week before. I can't remember. I do so many shows in a day or in a month. And I would just like to ask you how y'all deal with social justice. How do the system work, and how do y'all deal with those that promote injustice in the village?
Okay, injustice. Okay, that's a little more information, because I don't understand what social justice means anymore. You really have to break that term down for me exactly what you mean. You did. You said injustice in the village, correct?
Yeah, but I break it down simply as social living in communities or groups or organizations, wise, being around other people socially, and dealing with justice, dealing with honor code, or laws, statutes, and things that govern the organization, the community, or the group, or whatever.
I think you're trying to say, but Baba, I'm sorry. I think you're trying to say, how do y'all deal with somebody who do something they're not supposed to do, who crossing the line?
Okay, I can understand that. How do you deal with people who break the law? Okay, wonderful. And the only reason I like to give us a hard time on certain terms that we use is because we a lot of the time willy-nilly use certain terms that are just passed down through education or the university that really carry no merit. Okay? And so in terms of how do we deal with infractions of the traditional law at Oyotunji, I believe is the question. That is dealt with by the Rules Committee and the Ogboni. Every decent African committee has a rules committee, and the young people in the community who come up are not just brought up to be to have personal titles like doctor, lawyer, and the like. They're brought up to have titles, or taught at least, even if they don't follow it, they're taught to have community titles. Okay, whether you're the rules committee or something of that facet, or the head of the men's society, or the head of the workers, or the like. And so we have what we call the rules committee and the Ogboni. Ogboni is the council of elders. And so if there's an infraction, the Council of Elders will hold a council, and they will come together and meet under the proverbial oak tree. But it's not necessarily an oak tree, it's actually a building. Where they meet, it's called the Iledi. The Iledi is where the elders of the Ogboni meet to deal with all of the various trials and tribulations of the village. Most of them are extremely simple. Either you don't like somebody in the choir, or somebody stepped on your shoe, or somebody took something from you. However, all of that is dealt with. No matter what the situation is, it's dealt with by the Ogboni. And if you're the lowest man in the community and you have a simple grievance, that simple grievance is to be heard, okay? And it's different. I don't know about your community because I know you have courts and things whereby you enter in a plea today and it'll be another year before you actually go to court. By then you forgot about the incident. At Oyotunji, it can be dealt with in a swifter time, a few days or a week or so. And so you have the governing body is the Ogboni, the elders. They deal with all of the trials and tribulations of the people, all of the complaints. They deal out fines. They pass quote unquote judgment on a particular situation. And if the Ogboni, traditionally, I'm giving you the traditional way, if the Ogboni cannot come to an agreement on something, then they will utilize the king to break the tie on the particular situation. And so, basically, in a nutshell, conflict resolution is dealt with by the community, by the elders. That is the ideal. That is the ideal.
Okay, my next question will be, and I'm opening up the phone lines for others, but I just want to get a couple things on the table before others, join in. The village, is it open to other, groups or organizations and stuff? Seeing that you said a lot of them came to your, I can't even think of the words you used, inauguration, or however you said.
Coronation.
Coordination. Yeah, coordination. Do y'all deal with other groups and stuff? Do they come and participate or stay a week or something and, deal with diplomatic things of that nature?
Certainly. You mean in terms of other religions and other faiths and worldviews? Certainly. Oyotunji is open to all walks of life who are willing to come and participate in the growth of Oyotunji, African Village, and all its subsidiaries. And it's also open to those who want to come learn, just learn about African culture. There's so much to learn just living in Oyotunji and just being around the nature. We don't get time to sit down around books often. And so, yes, Oyotunji is open to the public. In terms of living in Oyotunji or living on the land and being a part of the ancestral tradition, Oyotunji, the way my father set it up is that he required that each person who petitions to stay in Oyotunji can trace their ancestry, their worldview, and their allegiance back to Africa. Because in Oyotunji, Europeans who can't trace one side of their family back, they're not necessarily welcome to live on the land. And it's not a racist view nor a prejudiced view that promotes us. It's a cultural view. Just as if you go to Jewish town in Brooklyn, you're not allowed to buy property there unless you're of the Jewish faith. You're not allowed to join the Jewish religion there in Brooklyn unless you're a part of the Jewish faith or the Jewish culture. And that's understandable. And the Jewish people have a point in that, is that the Jewish people realize that the Jewish culture and religion is for the Jewish people. So what are you doing snooping around our religion and our culture? You have your own. Go do your own is what the Jewish people are really saying. And so my father realized that all esoteric, all agnostic European cultures were self-contained. And so Oyotunji became self-contained for African descendants and people of Africa because that is who we connected to. Now, Europeans, people from Italy, people who trace their lineage to the Netherlands, to Spain, all have similar religions as the African people or the Yoruba people have. It's just that they do not tap into them because they've been told not to. But Druidism, and I've been open to Druidism and Wicca for some years, they're quite similar to African beliefs because all pagan cultures, as we call them, pagan just means country people or country. It's a Latin term that means country. And remember, it became a nasty word because the country people, the people who worship nature, didn't want to conform to Christianity. So they said, oh, damn the pagans, or damn the country people, because they like the rivers, the star, the moon, and the tree. We want Jesus or Christ, and so they damn the pagan people. So all pagan people believe the same. So in a nutshell, Oyotunji is open to all walks of life. However, to live in Oyotunji and be a part of the ancestral tradition. Ancestral means that we trace it back to an origin, which is West Africa. and that's our collective origin. So Oyotunji is open to all people, universities, schools, colleges. Today we had a group come from Boston, a hip-hop group come from Boston. So Oyotunji takes in a wide range, an array of colorful people.
Oba, could you tell us about, I saw a video on YouTube. Could you tell us about the Pan-African Grassroots Assembly that y'all had there in 2013, and who were some of the guests that you had that was all there that one weekend?
Well, we started in 2012 here at Oyotunji with the Pan-African Grassroots Assembly. That particular assembly grew out of our experience at the U.S. World Social Forum, whereby we took part in what we call People's Assembly movement, where 12 to 15 people, specialized people, came together, and we joined some of those specialized groups and discussed and came up with solutions that we can all take home. Okay, and that touched us because I said, wow, well, why aren't the African people, why aren't the African culture doing this? We should be coming together at our festivals talking about solutions that we can all take home and implement. And so the Grassroots Assembly was born. There's been a handful of, a cadre of lovely people who have been a part of the inception of the particular festival and a part of the success of the festival. Some are with us and some are not. However, we all came together to produce an event whereby African Americans can travel to a destination, an African community, tantamount to any Chinatown, Greek town. They travel to this African community and learn the culture of their ancestors. We have multiple concurrent, sometimes 12 workshops, 13 workshops over the weekend on various subjects, from child development, from scientific child development to child rearing to birth and midwifery, Ifa, women in Ifa, agriculture, agronomy. Brother Lasana Mack came from Washington, D.C. to talk about the Appeal Credit Union and talk about finance. And so each year we want to bring in a notable group of people, sometimes the same speakers, to keep reiterating to our people the necessary steps that we have to take if we're going to talk about self-determination and rising up as a people. It's too late to be talking about rising up. We need to be rose up already. And so we have to continue to have these sorts of festivals in our community. So if you come to the Grassroots Assembly, you come learn something, and you go home and have an assembly in your own community and discuss the problems, the potholes in the streets, the gangs, the violence, the murder, the drugs, and all those sorts of things, and then come up with viable solutions. You can't blame the drug dealers and take the drugs away from them if you don't have something to replace it with, because they're just going to go back to selling drugs. This is American culture. So the Grassroots Assembly was designed as a workshop, intensive working weekend, infused with Ifa, which is the oracle of the Yoruba people. And so we utilize the oracle, which tells us our future, our past, and everything we do not know. And we also utilize all of our speakers to bring enlightenment to the African-American people. And so we've had notables such as Muta Baruka come and speak at the Grassroots, Kidi Awadu of LIV Radio out of Nevada, Dr. Umar and Dr. Umar promised to speak at the Grassroots every year. Every single year he said he's going to make it his duty to speak at the Grassroots every year here in Oyotunji Village. Queen Kwet of the Gullah Geechee Nation has been here at Oyotunji celebrating the Grassroots Assembly and speaking to the people. And also Professor Smalls, who was recently in the Hidden Colors film. And also this year we had Precise Science, which is a revolutionary cultural, nationalist, Egyptian, Yoruba, hip-hop poetry group. And they brought Brother Umar of The Last Poets. So The Last Poets came this year. Every year we want to bring some of those people from our past who can bring something to the present. And we will have modern people in the future, but however, we want to deal with education. So this year, the Grassroots Assembly dealt with what we call hands-on. It's time for hands-on. So when people come to the Grassroots Assembly in the future, yes, we will have a few workshops, we do a little bit of talking, but we're going to do some working too. People can help build the African Oyotunji community, and they can also learn while they're building a community on how to mimic and copy Oyotunji where they are. Copy it in your own house, in your neighborhood. Copy it in your state. Copy it in your country. And so that is a little background on the Grassroots Assembly.
Okay, we got a 904. Your mic's open. If you would like to ask any question or make a statement, I believe the brother will love to dialogue with you. 904. 904-710.
Yeah, this is Brother Awolaye.
Peace. How you doing, brother?
Okay. I would like to, Kabiesi, do the village have any festivals or anything big coming up soon where if anybody want to come camp out on the ground or rent a room from you or just come visit the village? Anything going on in near future?
Thank you. In the weekend of the 22nd, here in Oyotunji, we have the Obatala Festival. Is kind of like our Emancipation Day. That is August 25th, 1959 was the day my father was initiated into African culture. And so that is our Emancipation Day, spiritually, culturally, socially, and religiously. And so that is going to happen. That is a festival where everybody wears white the entire weekend. All of the parties and celebrations, everyone wear white as much as possible. Obatala is the Yoruba deity of energy, of Yoruba energy of patience, Yoruba energy of knowledge, wisdom, and critical thinking. Okay? And so we enact that in us at Oyotunji. We have 13 festivals throughout the year, and so the public is welcome. We have universities come, school come, people come from China, Germany. We had a group from Canada just the other day that attended. So we are very much open to people attending the festival because when you attend the festivals, you help to support the economy of the village. And that is how economies are supported, by festivals and holidays. If you notice, America has a healthy group of holidays to make sure the corporations get their due. And so we mimic the same here at Oyotunji. So when you come to festivals and you bring your money, you buy food, drink, and jewelry and clothes and videos and things, you help to support the villages and the economy. That is what happens in Chinatown and Greek Town. It's the same thing happens in Germantown. They all go there to support the Greek restaurants, the Greek theater, and all of the like. So Oyotunji, we have concerts, hip-hop, reggae concerts to stay relevant, of course. And so Oyotunji provides a beautiful atmosphere to bring your family. You camp out, or you stay in one of the guest houses here at Oyotunji, and you really immerse yourself in the community. Because just to visit is different than staying the night in Oyotunji. Staying the night, you hear the nightlife. The nightlife, we don't talk about like clubs and singing. That generally ends around 3 a.m. The nightlife is the forest. You hear the symphony in the forest, which we're listening to now. And so Oyotunji provides for African Americans a destination, an African destination. Africa in America.
So, do y'all have an official website and stuff that you would like to give out right now? Just, make sure they get that.
Certainly. Oyotunji's website can be easily found by Googling African Village in America. However, the website proper is OYOT as in Tango, U, N as in Nigeria, J, I as in India. And so that's OYOTUNJI.org.
All right, so I believe that will have all the festival dates and everything on it. People, please visit the site. It sounds like it's a beautiful place to go just to, see a different part of life in America. You can go see the Grand Canyon. You could go see a lot of different sites in America, but this seemed like a place you will most definitely want to take the children, really see the sights. So I ain't saying I'm going tomorrow, but I'm probably going to roll through one day.
Okay. Oyotunji is situated within what we call the Gullah Geechee Nation. We used to call it the Low Country. But now, since we want to pay honor and homage to our Gullah Geechee ancestors, we call this whole area the Gullah Geechee nation. And so Oyotunji is situated in the swamps, in the estuaries, within the confines of rivers and islands, where our ancestors toiled. This is where our ancestors were born. South Carolina imported more Africans than any other port or state, if you call it that, in the entire country. And so this is what I like to call the big box. Okay, more Africans worked on plantations and built North American wealth from South Carolina, from these plantations that surround the village. And so for the village to be situated right smack dab in the middle, if you will, of all of these plantations, while in the village we're playing drums to Africa, and on the plantation they're toasting to the Queen. So Oyotunji has been a very interesting, enigmatic part of the emerging South. So as the South was emerging and it was coming on the scene and inviting people in, so was Oyotunji African Village, operating as a sort of a thorn in the side of the South Carolina system, because Oyotunji wouldn't go away. They tried to make it go away with the FBI. They sent their COINTELPRO. They had all of their natural mechanisms. However, Oyotunji continues to exist, knock on wood, because this is America. Oyotunji continues to exist because we continue to appease the spirits of our ancestors, and we continue to appease the African gods and goddesses. They do support us, and so they have looked out and made sure all of the COINTELPRO, the FBI, the sheriff, the health department, the local this and the local school board, and the magistrate, the school system, everybody wanted to shut the village down because of black people having self-determination. Could you believe that? You know, imagine a group of black people sitting on their own saying, look, we want to take care of ourselves. We don't want nothing from the government, only what we call foreign aid at the time. Foreign aid, you know, Oyotunji was food stamp in the early days. That was considered foreign aid because the North American government owes the African American people. They owe them. They do. It's like my father used to say, it's like owing somebody and you don't do them right. You know, you're a deadbeat if you do that. If you get a debt and you don't pay it, then you're a deadbeat. And so the American government owes the African American people. That's a fact of history. It's not nothing that I'm just feeling, you know, a way about because we're on the radio show and preaching, talking about Africa. No, it's a fact of history. African people for 400 years built the American wealth. And so Oyotunji is situated right in the confines of billion-dollar, elaborate 12,000-acre plantations. And so we exist as for our local African people. We're locals, internationals, and North American nationals or American nationals can come to Oyotunji and rediscover. So South Carolina was the place where we lost Africa. South Carolina also becomes the place in the modern time where Africa is given back to us.
So I would like to ask. Excuse me now. That was you, Drew?
Yeah, I just said Ashe.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I would like to ask, what is the educational system like there? Because it seems as if y'all bilingual, y'all speak how many languages there, and, you know, how y'all educating the children? Because it seems like you got a nice vocabulary and things of that nature. Do y'all go through regular homeschooling to high school level or whatever, and then go off to college or whatever, if you can help with that?
Oyotunji has its own school system. The school system was introduced in the beginning of Oyotunji in the mid-'70s. In the mid-'70s, the elders decided that they were not going to build this African culture in the African village and then send their children to be educated by the plantation system. And so Oyotunji sought to educate its own and have been doing so until present day. And we're going to have our school opening September 15th. So we're still at the grind of relevantly educating our people. Now I say relevant educating our people because people in Oyotunji's observation is that African people need to be educated relevantly in terms of as it pertains to their history, their dynamism, their DNA. All people are the same, but all people are not the same because certain cultures produce certain types of people. So at Oyotunji, We study all of the basics. We teach the children the basics. What I like to call, affectionately, I call it the hogwash, which is English, American history, and all of these things. However, we don't teach the hogwash. We teach true American history, not the stories that make everybody look like good. And so with all subjects that are taught to the children of Oyotunji are not just taught in the classroom, but in one shape, form, or fashion that we live in the culture. It's taught daily. It's taught 24 hours, and it's taught in a working manner. It's taught hands-on. And so for myself, I was able to understand math better out of the classroom than in the classroom, because out of the classroom we had applications of math in construction. You had geometry, you had algebra to a certain extent, you had mathematics across the board. And so hands-on is what Oyotunji does best in learning. The children are taught a healthy understanding of work and what it means to work at something. So before you can work at your test and your homework, you need to learn how to physically work in your community, cleaning your community, cleaning your home, cleaning your backyard, gardening, and doing all those sorts of things. And so children get a hands-on education. Okay, and this year at the school, we have a new group of students, and we're going to be even more hands-on this year, out of the classroom. Even though there are days where the classroom is necessary to break things down, however, out of the classroom is where we want to see the children applying their education in the community daily. Okay, so Oyotunji educates itself. However, the South Carolina government wasn't too happy with that, because the school board said, well, we're abusing the children because we're not sending them to public school. And so Oyotunji sought and got its own charter to operate school here at Oyotunji. And so children that grow up here or children that move to Oyotunji are incorporated into the school system. And so the school system is basically a hands-on learning. We learn in-depth African culture. We learn world culture. We learn about the Chinese, the Japanese, and everyone, the Mexicans, the Aztecs, the Olmecs. All of that is taught. And Oyotunji, as I said, is education day in and day out. It never ends. Even for adults at Oyotunji, education is day in and day out.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, we got 904. You're still open, and 405. Your mic's open. All you got to do is ask for the mic, and hopefully, all the other callers will be respectful and give it up to you.
Okay, this is 904. Brother, I hear you mention ancestors a lot, and I'm a Gungun priest, but a lot of people out in the radio land don't know what it is. And you mentioned a lot of countries like Japan and China, and they honor their ancestors. What is so important about us as black people in America worshiping and honoring and remembering our ancestors?
Well, that's remembering your ancestors is tantamount to success. All people remember their ancestors in one shape, form, or fashion and venerate them. The Japanese of today, the modern Japanese comes home from work, puts on a kimono, and he takes out a picture of his ancestors. He puts it on the shelf. He takes out water and burns incense, and he might play a little bell, and he sits there and honor and pray to those who came before him, because it is the ancestors in the African tradition. We got to remember everything you want to know about African culture. You would really have to relinquish your education, because now you're starting anew. So you wouldn't understand Africa from a radio show or just from a conversation. You really have to relinquish the knowledge, the rubbish, because it's all rubbish anyway.
Yeah.
And I say that in earnest, and I can back that up if you'd like me to. We can do that later. But we have to relinquish all of that rubbish to understand African spirituality. In African tradition, a person doesn't die. The spirit ascends. The body is like clothes. You change clothes all the time. The spirit constantly changes clothes. And so African people venerated their ancestors because they realized that in venerating their ancestors, they were empowering themselves. Because you always remember what grandma taught you. You always remember what grandpa taught you. And when they pass on, you remember that. So for African people, ancestors can be defined as values and ethics. you see, that are passed down from generation to generation. It is important to venerate your ancestors because that is your own power base, according to the African mind and the African worldview. While there are divinities and gods and goddesses throughout the spectrum, they are your ancestors. Those who came before you do not die. Europeans have educated black people into thinking that when you're dead, you're done, and you go to heaven and you sit and just be bored in heaven and bother God. In African culture, the spirit ascends. And we know the spirit ascends because body and spirit is energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. Physics teaches us that. So that particular energy, once it ascends and travels on into what we call the heavens or the realm of the ancestors, you can access that spirit and that energy to do work for you, to do good for you, to look out for the family, to take care of the children from a spiritual perspective, from heaven. And so when we say we honor and venerate our ancestors, all we're doing is honoring ourselves, because we think that we are here alone, but we really come from a legion of people. 904, you on the call, 405 is on the call, the radio host on the call. Y'all are here, but you're not responsible for you being here. You see that? You think you are because you were born and you got this ego that told you that I'm in charge of my own destiny. No. You're lucky the people who came before you did the right thing so you could be here. So that's what we venerate, and that's what we worship. Now, people get scared when you say worship your ancestors because some people say, well, you're only supposed to worship God. But you venerate and worship yourself in your household. So in African tradition, there are 3 pillars to a community, and I'll end with this. The 3 pillars are those who are unborn, the living, and the dead. They constantly work in tandem for each other. The living is the most important because the living lives and breathes off of the ancestors' work, okay? And then we take the ancestors' work and make it work in whatever the modern time is for the generation that's to come. So therefore, we don't drink up all the water, we don't eat up all the food, we don't use up all the gas and pollute all of the air, because we're thinking about the generation coming after us, because they're going to come after us. Depends upon it. As much as black men love, trust me, it's a generation coming after us. And so our ancestors teach us in that regard to not only live for the present, but live for the future, which we're not necessarily doing as a society today. And so our ancestors are basically that boogeyman, quote unquote, boogeyman. And in Africa, that's what it was basically was, because you told people that your ancestors see everything you do. So there's nothing you can get away with, because grandma, you think she's gone, but she can see everything you do. She's not in heaven, she's standing right next to you. And so there's a such thing as spirits or energies that move throughout the land. Some are good, some are bad. And so African people venerate their ancestors, and in turn, they celebrate their own personal dynamism, if that makes any sense to you.
Thank you.
They're flowing through our veins. Your ancestors are flowing through your veins right now, all the way back from that naked lady in the bush in Africa, the first lady, all the way back. Imagine that. And so when you venerate your ancestors and you have an altar set up with all of the pictures of your deceased ancestors, and you go there and you meditate and you call them names, ask for forgiveness, let them know you did not forget them, even though we kind of forgot most of them, but let them know you did not forget them, you know, and you create a space in your home where your entire family goes and get on their knees and meditate and pray to their ancestors and ask their ancestors for guidance. This was the African power before slavery, was the ancestors.
Okay, 405, you haven't spoken. Your mic's open if you would like to speak. And, you know, we got only these 2 mics open. We got plenty of other callers. If y'all would like to speak, just hit 1. You can ask a question, make a statement, join the conversation by just pressing 1. 405, if you'd like to speak at any time, just ask for the mic. Drew, your mic's still open too, so if you want to join in anytime.
True. I'm here. I'm going to give everybody else a chance to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, let me ask you, do you follow to some degree what's going on in Harlem now with like the Sonettas and what's going on in the so-called conscious community with the debates and the things that different people are talking about, because there's a lot of people that's dealing with Africa from that community and things of that nature, and they're most definitely trying to down what other people do. As Drew started off with the show me myself, I deal with the Israelite thing, in the Bible and that text and stuff. But yet at the same time, I never down anyone for what they believe in, because as you stated, what's for the Jews is the Jews, what's for the white man is his system, and that's what he used to navigate through the world. And the African system is for those that, proclaim Africa more than others and want to live by that system. So have you been following any of that stuff? Have you had a chance to run across it or anything?
Indeed. I've studied many cultures of the world. I've studied many cultures. I've studied Christianity. I've glanced and witnessed and been around Islam, Judaism, and the like. And I just have to go back to the original teaching of God, if you believe in God. Most people pretend to believe in God, but they don't want to believe in godliness. And godliness generally creates people and creates their attitudes, their religion, their culture, and all of that developed based on their geographical location. And so what I mean by that is that an Eskimo, he knows nothing about any of these religions we're talking about, okay? And so what does a sacrificial Jew has to do in Jerusalem has to do with an Eskimo, and what we call Eskimo is actually a derogatory term, but what we call Inuit. Hello?
Forgive me, somebody's mic was open and they talking. If I open up your mic and you hear the mic say open, then you need to mute your mic if you're not asking the question. Go ahead, Brother Mark.
Okay, I will sum up by saying that it was the culture of Africa, the religion, if you want to use that term. And what religion really means is to religion, to tie yourself back to those values, religion, to tie yourself back to a particular set of values, okay? Values that were stolen from Africa and turned into all of the other religions that we know today have seemed in some way, certain cultures and religions have seemed to distort the original value. So it is the spirituality of Africa that created all the religions, not the other way around. People would like to say different, but it is the spirituality of Africa that created all world religions. And that's why you find so many similarities throughout religions and the like. However, while African Americans are seeking to find their African tradition, that's a noble cause, and everyone should do that to find their intrinsic tradition and religion. They just want to know about it. They don't necessarily want to practice it. Okay, that's a good thing. However, we have to go further than just religion, because most of the religion we today is from books and teachings and writing, and that's not healthy. Those are opinions of the writers, and they are opinions of the writers. They're not necessarily fact or science. They are opinions of the writers, because we have to remember that in what we call ancient times, when the true enlightenment was being passed down from the sages, from the seers, from the prophets, it was being distorted as it was being written. So from the first sage who gave, or the first shaman, the first priest who gave the enlightened information, the person who inscribed it and put it in writing distorted it. And that continues until this day. So what you got today is what I like to call, and I affectionately, and I stand by this, I affectionately call it rubbish, because it really doesn't contain any of the true enlightenment. I've never met a Christian. I've never met no one that doesn't lock their doors. They give everything they got to other people. They give you the clothes off their back. They turn the other cheek. They love their neighbor. I've never met a person. And so when I talk about the enlightenment of culture and religions, the world should not be in the state it's in today. That is because religion has played a foul ball. Namely, the big three have been playing foul balls. And their foul balls is responsible for all of the bloodshed, the constant wars, and the like. Okay? They can remain nameless unless you would like me to name them. However, they have played so many foul balls that the world is in a perilous state. People don't know which way to go. While some pray to God, the rest of them steal your land and steal your resources. While you pray to their God and do their thing, they're stealing your women and taking your children. And so where is the great energy of all of these gods and goddesses? Where's the great energy of the African gods if we're not practicing and understanding the true message? The true message in Christianity, one true message could be do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But who does that? Mm-hmm. One true message is respect thy mother and thy father so that days will be long on earth. What does that mean? What does that mean? I know lots of people that respect their mom and dad and got in a car accident and died, or respect their mom and dad and died from foodborne illnesses. So maybe respecting your mother and father so that days will be long on earth could mean respect their ways of living, respect the ancestral tradition, because those who came before you lived a little longer and happier than we did today, and healthier. So where is the true enlightenment in religion? So when we get into talking about religion and what faith is the faith to believe in, there is no faith to believe in. The only faith is humanity and nature. That's all there ever was. That is the true enlightenment of religion, is humanity and nature. That's where all religions stem from.
Yeah, I don't like the term religion. I don't like the term religion myself. I start dealing with mystery system terminology more than anything, because a lot of things that we do deal with is dealing with the mysteries that most people are not aware of, no matter whether it be studying the ant, as the book say, go study the ant, and they give us these stories with the ant and the grasshopper, or the turtle and the rabbit. It's always something that's to be learned.
Certainly, and Africans use nature, just as you said, the turtle and the rabbit. The continent over, utilize nature in their stories. Not because they couldn't utilize people, but they utilized rabbits and turtles and snakes because that showed their close connection to Earth and the natural resources. And so if our cultures and our religions are not dealing with humanity, then we should all pack them up and put them in a dumpster, because they serve us no purpose. If they continue to divide human beings and make us war and fight against each other, that's not healthy. Those are divisive mechanisms. They're not unifying factions. They do not unify people. So then religion just becomes another WMD, weapon of mass destruction. Or deception, weapons of mass deception.
Most definitely. For your mic's open. I don't know if you know that, but you will have to unmute yourself. If you muted yourself, and you can speak whenever you feel like it. 405, you're still open. 904. Everybody whose mic been open is still open. Anybody that wants to join in, the phone number is 646-595-4551. Just hit 1, and you could be a part of the call, no problem.
Well, brother, I got a question. I'm going to jump in since I know nobody's going to say nothing. I just want to know, I get a lot of questions about the village, about how did your father become king, and did he just make himself king? But I know that he went to Africa and he was ordained king, made king over there. Could you break that story down about how did your daddy become king? And then I have a second part to that.
Okay, are you still there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay, certainly. Well, there's a lots of people today who like to use my father's experience as a class action in order to say, well, I can do that too. However, my father, when he moved to South Carolina, he was just known as Baba Osage. He was a priest that a lot of people went to, okay? He was the first African-American to lay claim to the African ancestral heritage, ancestral culture, religious heritage, if you will. He was the first African American. So that's why they call him Osageman Adefunmi the first. He was the first African American to redesign and re-implement the institutions of Africa. Marriage institution, death institution, religious institution, social institution. He was the first African American to recreate the dashiki in North America. Okay? He was the first African American to open up the first African cultural center. He was the first African American.
I don't want you to. You said that too fast for the audience. He was the brother that brought the dashiki back. Could you say that?
Yes.
Say that again.
Yes, my father was the first African American to reintroduce the dashiki to North American blacks and North America in general. He owned a shop called the Ujamaa Market, which was the first market in North America that sold African wares, African trinkets, African goods, African clothes. So it was effectively the first African market in North America, was called the Ujamaa Market. That was in New York. And so out of that market, him and his brother redesigned designed dashiki, what we call dashikis today, and they couldn't sell them to people because it wasn't a popular clothes item, so they would give them away. And so he had his wives. At the time, he had 3 wives in New York, and he had each wife work and manufacture. So they opened up, they began to manufacture in their apartment dashiki, and they took them out on the streets of Harlem and gave them to people. And some people will wear them, but African Americans realized when they put on this dashiki and this African hat, hey, I felt it looked like a king. So it instilled a certain level of pride. Your own clothes do. And so my father did that. And so by him being the first in all of these situations, he was a humble spirit. He was just known as Baba Osageman, which meant Father Osageman. Baba means father in Yoruba culture. It wasn't until they moved south and opened up the first village that they proclaimed him king. And they did that 2 years after. So one day, in October 5th, 1972, the small band of Yoruba Americans, today there are many people who identify themselves as Yoruba, but back then it was only, I can count them on 2 hands and 1 foot maybe, if that, or maybe just 2 hands. So there's about 10 people who came out October 5th, and they woke my dad up from his sleep with firecrackers and gunshots and the like. My dad said he thought it was an invasion of the Klan. He thought the Ku Klux Klan had finally showed up. So he jumped out of bed and grabbed his rifle, and when he said he peeked out the door, he saw the village people out there with guns and shooting in the air and firecrackers, and they told him to come out. They said, look, come out the house. They put a stool down. They set him on a stool, and they put a crown on his head and said, from this day forward, you're going to be our king. And you're going to be our king because you led us thus far in the movement, and you have to lead us in the future. So we look forward to your guidance, forward to the guidance of your queens or your wife or your Olori. We look forward to the guidance of what we're going to call from this day forward the royal family. Now, mind you, my father, we always had stories in our family of royalty from Africa, because you have to remember, my father was born in 28. His mother was born in 1895. His father was born in the 1850s. His mother just came out of slavery. His grandmother came from Africa. So the story stayed in the family as to who we were as a clan. And so my parents or my grandparents would always tell my dad about the royal girl that came from Africa, who came and she was sold for a lot of money to the Alexander Hamilton plantation, and she wore coral beads, and she was a princess from Benin, or what we call Dahomey, or Benin Republic is what it's called today in West Africa. So coupled with that, the people crowned my father king, and it wasn't until 1981 when my father traveled to Ile-Ife, the source of Yoruba tradition. He presented a presentation. He was sponsored by the Caribbean Arts Collective there in New York. They sent him to Africa, and after he presented slides and videos and films about Oyotunji, the king whispered in his kingmaker's ears and said, we're going to crown this man today. We're going to endorse him as the king of all Yorubas of North America. Yes, he said that. But my father didn't travel to Nigeria to be crowned king. He was traveling to just deliver a presentation at the conference. And so that is how my father became the king of the Yoruba people of North America. Yeah. And that was the first Orisha World Congress conference in the modern world. And today they're into their umpteenth, they're into their probably, they're in their 30-some-odd year of conferencing around the world. And so my father attended that first conference and was crowned at that conference. So when he came back to the United States, of course, he was already a king to the people, the Yoruba of North America, before he traveled. And so the self-determination of the African American is not to be overlooked with that Nigerian coronation, because the North Americans crown their own king based on their own self-determination. And so we can do the same. However, in order to be a king, one must have land, one must build institutions, one must build schools, and one must build housing for the people. The king must have water supply available for the people. And the king must supply security in the form of elders' council, community councils. Okay, are you still there?
Yeah,
yes,
we're
sir,
here.
I'm here.
We're here. We're trying to give people out there that's sitting there with their mics open a chance to speak. There's a lot of people that's mics still open. We got a 904-629 who hasn't hit one, but everybody else mic is open. If y'all would like to participate in the conversation, please feel free to chime on in. So, do y'all deal with polygamy? Do y'all deal? How do the
keep it on the ladder? We can get back to that later. We'll ask that later. But I got a lighter question. All right.
Lighter question.
I want people to understand what's going on first. But you, how old are you, brother? As the king, you are the king, and how old are you?
I was born in Oyotunji in 1976. And so according to the culture, Yoruba culture, the king never dies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just for education, I'll reveal my date of birth. However, the king never dies. And so it is the crown that becomes the king. Okay? It is the crown that is the king. So we don't get trapped in the person. We get trapped in the person that wears the crown.
Okay.
So the crown is the king. So my father passed away. He ascended to heaven at 75. And so the crown picks up that age coupled with the age of the new wearer. And so we multiply all of that time and wisdom. And the only reason we do that is because the new king, or the crown wearer of present, encompasses the same 75 years of wisdom and tries to encompass that wisdom, plus the wisdom of my meager 37 years. We couple that together and we come up with an odd number, a wild number. So to answer your question in terms of for your American audience, we are 37 at this point. I never try to remember my age because it's just a thing. And I'm actually 38. That's how much I don't remember my age. I have to count back to, I have to say 1976, 86, 96, 2006. I don't try to remember my age as most people do.
Yeah, most definitely, because I was born in 77.
I got a second part to this.
Africa.
That was just the first part of the question. That was just the first part. I wanted to ask you, now, by you being as young as you are in American years and growing up in that culture, in this culture, I can't say that culture, but this culture, how did you feel as a child? You know, I know you grew up in the village. You were the child of the king. How did that affect you? Did you always accept that you were going to be the king? Did you always know you were going to be the king? Is it something that you wanted to run away from? Is it something? And I know you accept it. I see you now, and you hold it down, brother. I honor and respect you so much. But were you always like that, or did you have to grow into that? Was it something that you ran from?
Do I want to run now? What do you think? Do
now,
I want to run now? We could debate that.
But
however, coming up
when you were younger, I knew you when you were younger also. So I knew you. You lived amongst the people of America, so you saw a lot of stuff. Did that stuff influence you a little bit, or did you always accept that? this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to be.
Absolutely. Really didn't have a choice here at Oyotunji, because remember, when a child is born in Yoruba tradition, they're given a divination. A divination is like a reading. The priest will cast the holy divination implement and then inform your parents as to the characteristics of this child and what this child's destiny will be, what they came to the earth to do. And that was divine for me at 9 days old, and it was revealed then that I was to be the next king of the village. And so whether I like it or not, if I do not follow the destiny given to me from heaven, I'll find a rough life. And so that's what most people are, most African Americans are in life. We're just born into the world. The doctor smacks you on the booty, and then you're cast into society with no direction. Your parents don't know nothing about you. They don't know what you're going to do or what you're going to be. And so that's one of the secrets to African culture, is that we know what the children are going to be 9 days after they're born, so we structure their life accordingly. So that was done for me. However, at a young age, I was told that I was a prince and I was to be the next king, so I got a little sassy with that and got in trouble with the elders, because I would talk back to elders and say, you can't tell me that. You talk to the king like that. You talk to the next king that way. And so I got jacked up, and my father discontinued all of the pomp and accoutrements that will be given to a heir to the throne. And so he took all of my royal robes, and he cast me and put me with the soldiers of the village. And so if you notice anything that I'm not necessarily a royal brat or egotistical, maniacal person, that's pretty much because my father took away all of the trappings and put me with the soldiers, basically. And so I became one of the royal guards, and I got cut in. So I have the marks on my body that says, I did do my service to the king in terms of guarding. And so if you look at old pictures of Oyotunji, you'll see me there dressed in a guard uniform. I was 12 or 13. My dad, he really put me through it. However, that was the discipline that had to be instilled. And so I wasn't necessarily raised to be disrespectful. However, no children in any good Yoruba African community or black community should be raised to be disrespectful. However, we are where we are today, and we can fix that. However, in African culture, it's taught from an early age how to be respectful and humble. And so it is a wise king that is a humble king. Yeah. And so I did travel. I lived in other cities, of course, and I've been around. I know the lingo, I know the culture, North American culture. However, I was just brought up in the traditional African village. And in the village, we traveled a lot as young people. I believe I traveled more around the country at 12 than my mother had done in her entire life. And that gave us a panoramic view of the country, and it made me realize at a young age, no matter what city you went to, black folks was in the same situation, as they say. And so understanding that, I got a healthy idea of what my life, work, and mission could be. But it didn't just happen. I had to shake off America. I had to shake off trinketism. I had to shake off the want to have a BMW and all the fancy trappings of the American sociosphere. I had to shake that off in order to live the life of a humble bush king.
But 904.
Yeah, we got 904. Your mic's open.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I've been to the village quite a lot lately, and I noticed that the children and the people are very respectable, and they're different than people here on the mainland. Is there any kind of manhood training or womanhood training you give for the girls and for the boys that we can bring our children? Maybe we got boys or girls, we want to have manhood training or womanhood training. Do you have that open for the public also?
Well, certainly. We have various rites of passage collectives. By rites of passage, I mean various rites of passage. You perform various rites or rituals to pass a young person from childhood into adulthood. We have collectives that come from Baltimore. We've had collectives from Miami and the like. They come to Oyotunji seeking a threshold for young men to go through to enter into manhood. By threshold, I mean that a demarcation point, a point for when you say, look, you're not a boy anymore. We say that in North America to our children, but we give them no true right or rituals or tests and challenges to go through. We just say, one day you come out and you give them a beer, you say, you know what, you're a man today. Have a toast. And that's generally the North American plantation style of raising a man. And so at Oyotunji we have what we call men's society and women's society. Each one of those societies deal with teaching the young women or teaching the young men the various facets of communal life and life in general. And so by the time a child reaches 14, then they're to go through what we call rites of passage. And that is a series of tests and challenges that they must complete in order to prove themselves to the community. So you're not just allowed to the females and allowed to go entertain ladies and talk to women and just be like a man without actually going through rites to prove that you could do that. So if you can't bust out all 20 of the challenges, then you might not get a wife. You might not have a voice in meetings. And so once the young men pass these tests and challenges, they have voice in the adult meetings. They could speak alongside the adults. And the adults don't allow, African people didn't allow young children just to grow up and one day you're just magically a man. Throughout our ancestral tradition, where our ancestors came from before slavery, they had various tests and challenges young people had to go through. And that breeds a decent young man, a respectable young man and a respectable young woman who have respect not only just for themselves, but respect for community, respect for environment, and respect for elders. Yes. And so, yes, in Oyotunji, we do have a system of training for young people to help them move into the transition of adulthood much easier than what the general American society provides, which is nothing. Most young men are allowed to just join gangs and make their own gangs. At the village, we try to create gangs for the young people, work gangs, positive gangs, cultural gangs, spiritual gangs. And so that's why you have the Egbe society, the men's society, the Dokwe, which is the work gang where the young men learn construction and help build the village, meanwhile learning construction and solidarity. Okay, so African people had ritual and actual practice around development of human beings. We just didn't have, as a people, have lip service and talk about what could be possible. We actually did it.
Mm-hmm. That's what's up.
So once again, all mics are open, people. If you would like to ask a question and stuff. Peace, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
How you doing, sister?
How you doing? I'm good. You?
Oh, we good. We're good.
Awesome. So I was just saying thank you to the OVA for, everything that you do, especially, first of all, for sharing your history, the history of the Crown. I appreciate that. That's just like a gift. I do have a question. You all were mentioning the different societies that are established within Oyotunji for both the development of men and women. Right now in the United States, and I guess with our people, with original people all abroad, there's a disparity with women, with black women, be it on a psychological level, on a physical level, relating to men, relating to ourselves, loving our color, etc. I could go on and on. Do you think, and I believe strongly, personally, had we not been denied our natural state of being, we would be in a totally different mindset, even if it's just the fact that we were able to openly, freely call on our God. You know what I'm saying? To hold on to and preserve our spirituality. I know that in every part of the world where we were taken into the transatlantic slave trade, not all of us were totally denied our religion, but a vast majority of us were. Do you think that had we been able to still adopt those same type of culture values, situation would be different through Yoruba? Also, by comparison to the way that women outside of this culture are reared, you mentioned rites of passage, and we do have a severe lack of those things. Can you tell me in contrast, if a woman really, really subscribes and wholeheartedly adopts to that way of life, accepts that as her natural self, what differences we would see as a nation and in our women? And thank you, Adefunmi. Thank you.
Hello, did you get all of that question, brother? He might have fell off, I think, 305. There he is. He's back on the... Did you catch all of that question, brother?
If she can repeat the question, I got disconnected. If you could just repeat it in a nutshell.
Okay, nutshell. How do you think things would be differently if women in America, black women in America right now, would be able to accept and subscribe to the principles of Yoruba as opposed to the way that we are now, based on some type of religious system or lack thereof? And also, what do you see based off of the participation in the women's groups, the Egbes, the societies for women, and going through rites of passage? What differences do the women who subscribe to Yoruba, specifically in Oyotunji village, how does it benefit them, and how could it benefit us? There you go. That's a nutshell.
Well, you have to remember that had Africans been left alone and the Europeans did not get greedy and want the gold, the cotton, the cloth, and the people, then African people would have been left to their own natural development. So just like many peoples around the world, if you look at them from 400 years ago until now, they were left alone at their own natural development and came into their own quote-unquote globalization, if you will. And so they were left to their own right to develop. And so, of course, had African people been left not just to Yoruba culture, to Twi culture, to Ghana culture, to Bibio culture, Mende culture, Timne, Mandingo, Bibio, Phi, Tweak, had all of those African indigenous groups been left to their own development, of course they would be in a different state. I've traveled to Africa and seen some different Africans. You know, you get out of cities and you see the people in the villages like ours, you see a different type of African. You see a passionate black man, a passionate black woman about their duties. They're passionate about their duties. In a lot of African villages and even in the cities, the first thing they do in the morning is everybody get up and sweep the streets and the curbs, the sidewalks in your yard. When the last time you seen somebody in your hood or your community doing that, waking up in the morning, sweeping the community and picking up trash? Only people that I know pick up trash in our community is the people selling cans or the people who have to do community service. And so very basic things like general community cleanliness has been removed from the African. And so you can imagine the other things that have been removed. You know, and I don't just say this because I'm picking at black people, but just go to our communities and look around, you know, and see where we really live. Not where we went and been gentrified and where we live with other races, where the black people are concentrated. You can tell the very depths of the cultural, respectful soul has been removed. So therefore you find rubbish, you find filth, you find garbage, you find dilapidation, and the like. And so not only does it exist in the physical form in our communities, it exists in our heart, in our minds, in our psyche as a people. So therefore you go out to nightclubs, or you go to party at a nice party, you just want to enjoy yourself and celebrate because it's TGIF, or thank God it's Friday, and you have to deal with gun violence and fights, and so no one wants to go out anymore. Black people, the musical people, who have to party every weekend, they must do it by nature and by ancestry. We must celebrate either to the drums or to speakers. We can't even do that because of the prevailing culture has taught us to be negative. And so, of course, here at Oyotunji, when you implement a male society and a female society, you begin to curb society. Even though it's like a rat fighting against a dinosaur, still, you begin to fight back. And so with the women's society here at Oyotunji, yes, they do have some of the ups and downs of general society. However, they're able to curb it with facets of African tradition. Did I answer your question?
To an extent, but I'm appreciative.
Okay, don't be nice. Don't be nice. Make me answer your question. Don't be nice. What part are you not understanding that we didn't cover?
I understand fully everything you said. The question that I had is, without prying too much, what type of implementation, what type of training, what type of change? And I'm saying that so that generally the sisters I will hear, if something sounds true to soul, you can find a way to implement that in your life no matter what you subscribe to. So I'm asking, I guess I'm being nosy, what does it take to make a woman, a Yoruba woman, I'm sorry, a woman in Oyotunji, and by that I mean the standards that she's raised with, the intelligence, the self-respect, the love for country, and by country I mean Africa, love for the Orisha, respect for the crown, respect for her elders, tradition. What, you know what I'm saying, without going too in depth, like what's the procedure or what's involved?
Well, in terms of young women entering into adulthood, let's say 13 or 14, they begin their menses and then they're cordoned off by the elder women of the village. We do not have a lot of young women in that particular state, but I remember, and they're going to come in the future, but I remember we had that age bracket here when I was coming up. They would be cordoned off by the elder women, and the elder women explained to them all of the trappings of the female mystique. Okay? And they explained to them, to their knowledge, all of the trappings of the male mystique. Okay? And so from that point, then they are given a set of tests and challenges, again, to prove themselves. So not just to prove themselves, but to also acquire skills, because they have to learn how to make their own clothes. They have to, of course, be well-versed in the culinary arts. They have to be well-versed in all of the various facets of compound life. They have to be. They have to learn how to build, how to construct furniture. Okay, because remember, traditionally it was the women who built the houses in many African villages. You know, so that gave women a healthy respect and a place. You have to remember, all of the things that we do in Oyotunji or our ancestors did was to give every gender, or both genders, their place in society. And so it's not that a woman's place is in the home. Not in African culture. A woman's place is generally outside of the home. A woman's place is making money and building wealth for the family. A woman's place in African culture is holding the wealth, managing the wealth of the family and the well-being of the family. The woman generally issued out to the husband money if he needed to buy more seeds or the like. She was the bank. We didn't send our money off to various places. We had a strong woman who did that. And so at Oyotunji, the young women taught that you can be just as equal as the male, depending on how you apply yourself. You can be a chief, the male could be a chief. You could be a priest, the male could be a priest. You could be a landowner, the male could be a landowner. So this is a matriarchal society, African culture is. It's passive. It's not like European where you think the man is everything, the man is the head of the household. What she is in African culture, the man is the protector of the compound. But, you know, a good African and a good black man, even in the 20s, knew who was in charge of the home. And so we've lost that as black people in North America. We've lost that primarily because of the spiral down away from African values. Remember, in Mississippi, if you wanted to talk to a daughter, the grandma invited you to the house, a suitor. And you wasn't the same age as the granddaughter. The grandma knew she'd invite a man 5, 6, 10 years older. If the granddaughter's 18, she'd invite a man over 28 and interview him. And then you allow her to go sit on the porch and talk to her granddaughter while she looked through the window, you see. And so these things that we call old and outdated really should be reinstated so that we have a healthy respect of development of males and females. And so basically at Oyotunji, we try to tap into that ancestral knowledge again. Ancestry comes up, whereby we reliege, we tie back to, we sankofa, all the way back to those values that help produce Africans without an orphanage, that help produce Africans without old folks' homes, that help produce African communities without drugs, African communities without jails, okay? And so that we tap into, and it's a healthy bit of knowledge, and we can't cover it all on the phone, but basically that's the process of how we get young women to understand. And so, interestingly enough, Oyotunji has a decent record, and either the young people who lived here and grew up here or got knowledge from here have went on to be productive. Even if they went on to live what we call a malefic life, and they're in the jailhouses and things like that, they begin to remember their education from the village and apply that where they are. And so we educate people out of that.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. How do you, last question, I'm done. How can you can't live in two. I guess you can. You're proof that you can live in both worlds. You understand what I'm saying? You have to operate in both. I see dire situations for us, for women. It's for women and for female and male relationships in the African American community. I do, and it's not just affecting adults; it's affecting our children, which just dooms us. And as you said before, we are, our ancestors lived through us. Therefore, we need to provide a way for the babies. And if the psyche is off balance and the dynamic between man and woman is off balance, the babies are going to suffer. I'm asking questions specifically about women right now because that is my primary goal, to make sure that the children are the recipients of anything positive and we eliminate anything negative for them. So, again, closely, I'm asking, how would it be possible for black women now, for sisters now, to try to adopt certain things? I know that as a 5%, I checked into, as I subscribed to 5% Nation, we were instructed to take, as well as Muslim sisters, as you know, take NGT classes, which trains you, how to keep a house, how to keep a husband, how to sew, how to cook, how to clean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's beneficial. You're able to still live in one world and really subscribe to one culture. How is that possible? Here are the small things that sisters can do to become more attuned to themselves, to move towards those directions, if nothing more than for the babies. And pardon me for my verbal going on and on. Peace, you all. Thank you.
Okay, could you just rephrase your question in a nutshell? You covered a lot this time.
Okay, in a nutshell, what are some small steps that sisters can take right now to center themselves? A lot of us are starting to come to this element, some say the black woman of God, et cetera, but we're all trying to find that balance, that level of divinity. I would hope for the children. I'm asking you, what steps can women take, sisters take, to gain centeredness, to get towards the positive benefits that you've spoken of? Was that simple enough?
Well,
yes.
I don't know. First off, I'll tell you I don't know. I'll try to say some things that could probably reach you where you are. Well, we do know that African people were taken away from the source, the land base, and the culture base was also taken away from them. That means their operating system. You got an operating system on your computer, and you see what happens when it goes amok. You can't get nothing done. You have to reboot the system. And so it's nothing that you could do, and I can't tell you on the call. But you do have to reboot the system. We have been irrelevantly educated. And so women today think that the shorter, the better, the more revealing, the better, which may be true, because there are societies much more peaceful hours. They don't have prostitutes. They don't have teenage pregnancy and all the like, and they wear no clothes. The Andaman Islands, Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, and many parts of Africa, they wear no clothes. So you can't say that hypersexuality and all these sorts of things. It is the culture of North America that ruins people, and that has been ruining people for a very long time. Okay, so it's not necessarily men's problems or female problems. They're what I like to term human problems. Okay, and until we can educate people, relevantly educate people out of that, you're still gonna continue the cycle. You're going to continue the cycle. And then, yes, there is a bigger war today against African American descended women, because when I was coming up, the men would be the ones fighting if you go out to a team dance or something. Today, it's the women. The women carry guns and the bad girls. They're the bad ones today. Not bad as in bad, but they're the ones with all of the titles, all of the negative titles. They're starting to acquire that. And so as I see that trend, I notice that, okay, there's done the African male in. It seems as if they're targeting the African woman, not through her womb, but targeting her mind and targeting her wallet. Okay, they want, if you look at some of the best Fortune 500 companies, they have African women in many of the top positions, and many positions of property throughout the organization. That means that the European realizes the value of African women. Why is that? The European is able to realize value in anything because they have their intrinsic, it's their culture that we're practicing. So they can see the value. We cannot until we visualize the world through the lens of our ancestral tradition, which is a philanthropic tradition, which is a passive tradition, which is a humanistic tradition. So therefore, we become the race of the future. Okay, not because we're black or we're tough or we're cool or we was around for 1,000 years. No, we become the race of the future because African people innately are passionate about human beings, and they are passive. And we have what we call a thymus gland. Dr. Sebi talks about the thymus gland, which produces consideration and love in a person. That's why the African people were easier to take over and enslave than the Native Americans or any other white people, because their thymus gland, according to Dr. Sebi, shrivels or deteriorates over time, so they don't have a compassionate bone in their body, so to speak. So Africans, with our compassion, we as a people can utilize that to relevantly educate the young boys and the young girls. Okay, if you want to educate young men and young women out of the plantation system, do not give your daughters baby dolls and give your boys trucks. You're already creating a division right there. In Africa, the kids play together. They play whatever they play. There wasn't no doll babies for the boys and pink for the girls and blue for the boys. My daughter always say, I want to wear blue, Baba. Why can't I wear blue? Boys wear it. Why can't I wear it? I said, well, I started to go into this thing about color. I said, look, you can wear blue. It's no problem. That's a myth. And so we begin it at a young age. Children are born into this world ready to build bridges, ready to work on social design. Children are born into the world ready to understand nature and the cycles of nitrogen, phosphate, hydrogen, and carbon, the cycles of life. They're ready to understand that, but what do? We give them the Mickey Mouse Club, and we set them down in front of television for Disney Channel and That's So Raven and Ben 10 and SpongeBob to raise them. And then we send them to educational institutions that are governed by the plantation system. This is preposterous. What people talks about liberation and self-determination without their own schools and their own land? We should be quiet until we can get our own schools and our own land and purchase our own and live off of our own self-determination. Other than that, it's lip service. And so we can talk about the brothers and the sisters and give speeches in colleges and the like, but until we can provide a place, a training ground. Even Al-Qaeda has a training ground. Where is our training ground for what we talk about, for what we aspire to? And so we have to create that. Oyotunji is just one. We can mimic this throughout the country. You can mimic the idea throughout the country. So to answer your question, which I never answer questions direct. I'm sorry for that. However, because there is no direct answer. Everything is extensional. If you want to know the true problems of today, you got to go back to the stardust. Did you know that? You know, it's all extensional. Nothing is created because, we just have it today. It's all extensional. So we relevantly educate people out of the dysfunction.
Well, let me say this, y'all. We got 7 minutes to the end of the show. We have overtime, but it don't seem as if people want to talk that much and take us into overtime. So I appreciate the brother coming through and asking some questions and enlighten y'all about the village and stuff. Now, for everybody that's listening live, that's on the line, you know, on the caller's line, listening in live through through the speakers or whatever, and for those that's archiving, hopefully y'all go to the website, which he probably will give y'all again before we go. Go to the website, check it out, go down there and, be nosy. Maybe you'll learn something. Get introduced to something that you probably never would have thought existed in America. So, like I said, one day I look to make it through there. I got to get a couple things straight. But, I'm always into learning something new and seeing what's going on in the world. If I ain't got to travel all the way across seas to see it here, why travel? I ain't got no passport yet anyway. But, brother, and Drew, thank you for, hooking me up with the brother and, allowing him to come over here and spend some time with us and stuff. That was a beautiful thing. you thinking of me. But we got another caller. We got another caller right quick. 678. They just put their hand up. How you doing? Welcome to the show. We got 5 minutes. You can take us over.
Greetings, Alafia. Greetings, Alafia, all the way from Atlanta. I grew up in Oyotunji village, and I'm so honored and humbled and elated that your show featured our Oba, Ekale Kabiesi.
Oh, Ekwale, Ekudelewa.
And thanks to Brother Drew and Awolaye and yourself. You're doing such a wonderful job. Please keep it going. Ashe. I do pray. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
I have a question for the sister that just called in. This is Sister Jade.
Yes, sir.
As for the people, could you explain how was it like being in the village as a child and growing up? Because I want people to have a clear understanding of the village. You know, we went through the history, but I want them to have a clear understanding of life in the village. It's like
wow. That's such a loaded question because it's almost like I don't know how to answer that. And I don't know, I know that growing up, I grew up in an African setting, and I know that we learned interdependence, and we also learned about our culture, but we just kind of lived it. So, like, as opposed to what? Like, I grew up, like, in Africa, in the center of America, so I know maybe a little bit, but I know growing up in Oyotunji was one of the most fulfilling things I have done. I would never trade it in. I made lifelong friends. I had a chance to experience Africa through African eyes, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience, going through all the rites of passages. I went to school. I went all the way through, and I graduated from the Urban Rural Academy. Like everyday life was everyday life. We had chores, just in an African style or an African setting. So growing up in Oyotunji was a very, very wonderful experience. And I'm so humbled and glad that my parents chose that for me.
Yes. And your father, and that brings me to another part of the question. Your father, he was in the movie Roots that they filmed in Oyotunji, and it was in that the rites of passage part of the film. Okay. And that was a part of the film Roots that really, really touched me and influenced me. That rites of passage part. That was on YouTube. I was on YouTube, and there's a rites of passage.
And that's where is a very small clip of what a rites of passage program is like. But it's, and it's Oyotunji. It's pronounced Oyotunji. And I'm very grateful to you, sir. Thank you for allowing us to share. But in the rites of passage program takes anywhere from 1 year to 2, depending on how quickly you go through all your rites. And it's a women's rites of passage and a male rites of passage. But yeah, my father was in Roots, and I was in Roots, and that was really, really cool. Got a chance to meet Alex Haley. We got a chance to meet a whole slew of, what we say are the famous African Americans and just famous people coming through Oyotunji. Yeah, so that was cool.
Well, thank you for coming on, sister. I definitely thank you for calling in.
Well, and I'm very grateful, and so nice to hear the Alba home. This is just a wonderful, wonderful avenue or venue that you've created here, and that you brothers are doing, and sisters. And I say, please keep it going, and kudos. Thank you, Your Highness. And look, this is the second time. Wow. Get ready. Can you get something started, Baba?
I share.
And Kale, and Kale to Brother Drew and Brother Awolanye. Kale to Your Highness.
Oh, Odaro.
Odaro.
Oh, Gasoleo.
Peace.
So it's y'all here. We pretty much in overtime now. It's the end of the show. So I want the brother to finish off and give us anything he would like us to remember, in closing. And we're gonna close out the show once again. Thank everybody for calling in and participating and listening live and archiving.
Is you still on the line?
Yes, we're still here.
Well, can you close out in Yoruba?
No, don't close out yet. I have another question.
Oh,
okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. When you close out in Yoruba.
If y'all got something to do, I still got another question. We're in overtime. We can ride out in overtime for.
Okay, man. What's the next question?
I want to know about life in the village. I want the people to have a clear understanding of what it's like in the village. Because a lot of people, they think it's like a Disney World type thing where it's just something where you just come and visit. But it's more than that. And he explained a lot of that. But I have a few questions as far as the foods that we eat in the village. Because these are questions that people have given to me, and I want these questions answered. I'm getting inbox questions right now. People inboxing me. What do y'all eat? Is it that you don't watch TV? Do you have light? You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand the question.
Because they think it's more of a I don't want to say Jim Jones type thing, but just like some people just out here faking and perpetrating. But I've been here and I know what it's like.
Well, certainly, and people who feel like it's a Jim Jones or something they can't trust, that's only because America has bred an untrustful society. For so long, you don't even trust your own people. And some people don't even trust their own parents. However, many people trust to venture through the woods and come to Oyotunji. Many years ago when I was a child, more white people came to Oyotunji than black people. This is to show you they educating you out of your birthright while they steal it up on the, not necessarily steal it, I just say steal it, but what I really mean is that they explore it as much as more than you explore it because they tell you it's bad while they go and explore it. Case in point, there are a lot of Africans, a lot of Europeans in Africa, a lot of Americans in Africa, but they're not black. You see? And so at Oyotunji, it's a physical life. Oyotunji is a physical life. Many people would come to Oyotunji and they thought that you come to an African village and people walked around in white robes and prayed to the sun and the heavens all day. Far from the truth. Oyotunji is a physical village. Each morning, myself as the king, I get up and continue to build and maintain Oyotunji with my bare hands. And so do the chiefs. We have chiefs here who are what you would call elderly in your society, but here they just right. They here and they work alongside everybody else and hands-on. And so Oyotunji is a hands-on community. In Oyotunji, you're taught to keep your mouth shut and keep your ears open because you just might learn something. And so Oyotunji, we have our own conflict resolution. Children, I remember when I was coming up, is different than today. The times obviously change. If the times don't change, then you're in trouble. However, we still keep the foundation of the teaching and the true enlightenment and the true tradition of the teachings in a modern time and apply that to whatever situation. And so, but when I was a child, we woke up in the morning, we raised the flags in the village. We have 3 flags that we raise. We go out and say our pledge to the flag. Oyotunji has its own pledge that starts out by saying, I am compelled by a spiritual force that I cannot resist to swear my eternal allegiance to the king and the flag of the Yoruba nation, And the pledge ends in saying, I also solemnly swear to do everything I can and use every means conceivable for the welfare of my people and the preservation of the customs and traditions of our ancestors. And so that's a pledge. We say it in English and we say it in Yoruba. And so all of the children learn that. And if you're a child, your first chores in the morning is to rake up the compound, to deal with the cleanliness of the compound. You rake up everything, and then you prepare for school if you're at school age. When I was a child, we had to take 3 pieces of wood to school in the wintertime because we had a wood stove. So you had to go out in the forest and collect wood before you went to sleep. So the children had to provide their own heat. They had to clean their own classroom. And in many instances, they had to paint and maintain their own classroom. And so the teachers would come in and educate us. After school, we had 1 hour, and then you had to report for public civic duties. That's whether a roof needs to be fixed if you're a male, or things need to be painted, or market items, things need to be created if you're a female. Also, there is what we call the dokwe. The dokwe is the work crew or the work gang in the village, which is comprised of young men. And, of course, no man likes to consider himself old, so you have people in their 70s who continue to be a part of the young men's group or the dokwe. They build the village. And so young men have several hours throughout the day whereby they give public service to the community. Remove garbage, build, farm, anything you can think of that goes on in the community in terms of work, young men have to do that. And so and we also had, when I was coming up, we would have PP, which was a morning drill to get everybody's wheels working in the morning. Now today, since we have this interesting generation, I believe you all call them the millennials in English, we just update our system to their generational wants and desires. And so they do wake up a little more later than we did. And, of course, we woke up later than our parents. And our parents always told us we were the laziest bunch of kids, and we say that about this generation. Every succeeding generation thinks the same thing about the succeeding generation, okay? And so understanding that, Oyotunji then just updates its operating system. So we work with the youth a lot more than understanding where they're coming from and communicating just a bit more than we did. So, but still today, the young men are required to work and give certain hours of community service to the community per week. They also encourage heavily to be entrepreneurs, to create goods. This is a culture, so you can make clothes, you can make hats, you can make shoes, you can make statues, you can make all sorts of things when you have a culture, based on that culture. And so at Oyotunji, the young men are required to take on rites of passage, and so are the young women. And so in a nutshell, Oyotunji is an operational village. It's functioning. If you come to Oyotunji, you're going to be a part of the work crew. You're going to help build. You're going to learn concrete, cement, simultaneously learning the African culture when you ask questions to elders while you're working. It's a beautiful thing to have young people and older people working together because they share while you're creating. While you're creating your community, you share knowledge and wisdom and the like. And so another interesting facet of Oyotunji is arranged marriages. I've had an arranged marriage before whereby the parents in the community and the elders arranged the marriage for me. And so everything was arranged for me. All I did was I showed up to the wedding nervous. You see? And so there's also some of the young ladies, a lot of the young people moved away from the village, acquired knowledge, and in their right ages of 28 to 35 and 40, they're bringing that back to Oyotunji. They're bringing the knowledge they acquired in what you call Babylon, or what we term Babylon, or the general society, they bring it back to the community. And that's a beautiful thing because that is how Africa is developing itself today. A lot of those people who left or went to Europe to work have sent money, continue to send money, so when they get back to Africa, they got stores, they got businesses, they got barbershops, they got beauty salons, they got a clinic, all built from the wealth created abroad, and people send that back to the village and continue to be a part of it because African people knew that the village would always be there. And when you got old and decrepit, or you got old and became an invalid, or you couldn't move, you can always retire to the village. It was going to be there. So people invested in the village their whole ancillary life while they were away from the village in hopes of repatriating one day to just relax. And so Oyotunji is a relaxed place now. I wake up in the morning generally, and I give thanks. I drink some moringa tea, might have some coffee, and then we go about our day. Visitors come to Oyotunji daily And so we give tours to African Americans, to white people, to Chinese people, to all walks of life come to Oyotunji. We educate them. Just today we had about 20 students from Boston that came to Oyotunji. They had some other plans. Interestingly enough, once they got to the village, they scrapped all of their plans. They gave up on the place. Like, look, we're staying here. We're not going anywhere. There's music. There's African culture. There's a king. It's interesting. We're learning. We're not moving. And so they stayed all afternoon and even performed a play for the village. And so we wasn't performing for them. They came and performed for us here at the village. And that's the treasure. That's why the village was created, so that people can come to an African space and explore Africa, go in depth with the culture, be disciplined as it pertains to African values and ethics. And then we work together. Now you got to remember, there is strong discipline in our culture, but there's also room for understanding. We don't banish people or beat people into submission. We know that everybody's going to arrive at their destination at their own pace. The American schools are the ones that are guilty when they give children A's, B's, F's, and C's. What they're really saying is you're not better than the person before you. So therefore your father gives the ones with A's $1 and beats the ones with an F. And so that's creating division. Oyotunji strives to, throughout all of our imperfectness, because we are what we call imperfect, and we are perfect to a certain extent. With all of our ups and downs, we have all of the problems, trials, and tribulations that all black people have in North America. Because remember, Oyotunji is a monastery of sorts, a safe haven for African Americans who have been traumatized by post-traumatic slave syndrome. Syndrome means the trauma continues. And so that is what Oyotunji opens ourselves up to. And daily, we have people who come to the village, African American, primarily Christian people who come to the village to get readings, to hear something different. They've heard all of the major religions and all of the hogwash. They've heard it, but they've never had a dafa from Ifa based on the African tradition, whereby they are told how to function in their life, the best things to do, what is for you, what's not for you, personally for you. And so Oyotunji caters to the dysfunction of black people daily. African people come here looking for help on a daily. And so we have a strong philanthropic arm whereby our priests are not just priests. They don't preach at all. They don't stand up on pulpits and preach. They actually practice. They work for people. They actually deal with the psychology of America, the broken psychology, and try to infuse it and cure it with African psychology. So in a nutshell, Oyotunji is a working village. You come to Oyotunji, roll up your sleeves, bring your shovels, hammers, your skill saws, bring your level, bring your farming tools. If you got seeds, bring them too. If you like to sow, bring your sewing machine. Oyotunji is a doing village. And so we're not just here talking about religion and society and all of the wonderful things we can do. If we can't do it, we generally try not to talk about it. And so Oyotunji is a working community.
All right, one sec. Let me open up the mics. If you're not speaking and participating at the moment, mute your mics, please. We're just getting some noise from one of these mics. Anytime you want to speak, just unmute your mic. So all mics is again.
This is 904.
You got the flow, brother.
Oh, okay. Brother, I heard you touched earlier on the education and the schooling in Oyotunji village. Does the education equip the students enough to go on to higher learning, to higher accredited colleges? And the sister that was on earlier, did she go on after she graduated from Oyotunji High School to college?
Well, my father never really reveled in the fact that he can create young people to mimic the American system. They knew they could do that. That's just a byproduct. Of course, it's possible to be educated by your own people and go on to higher education. Higher education was never impressive to Oyotunji people because they knew this was the highest education. All of the stuff you learn in schools, basically the universities are places where they take your money. It's corporate now. The universities are not teaching anything new. They're keeping everybody as a cog in the wheel. They're not making new people or making anything that's flowering or anything different. And so, yes, it's possible, but it's not our goal to say, oh, we can educate our children to go to college. Well, that's pretty much recycling, unless you go into college to learn a particular trade, a discipline that you're going to apply to your people. That is what started Oyotunji. Use your education and your knowledge philanthropically. Use it for your people. Don't just go to college to be a lawyer so you can have a Benz and live in the penthouse. That's ridiculous. And so my father he discouraged us from going on to university. However, we can go and do it if we like to. And if our parents wanted us to, we can do it. But the leader discouraged it because he said that is just sending people backwards. However, a lot of the parents in the village saw that if we send our children to higher learning, then we're putting our best, our anomaly in the midst of the educational system, and they will, and they have, and did affect those around them and brought the culture to wherever they was. And so it was a good move. But it wasn't, we didn't necessarily, and we still don't educate today for college, because college generally educates people to get a job. Oyotunji's model is to educate you to be entrepreneurs, self-sufficient, self-determination. It's highly unlikely that you're going to learn that in college, because the first thing they do in college is beg you for a bunch of money that you don't have, and then put a young person in debt. So they live in debt for the rest of their lives, and then that debt is sold by AIG to different corporations around the world, and they give them plus A credit rating, and it turns out to be bad packages, and it ruins the entire globe, and that's how we got this particular economic downfall that we've had. It's based on the college model. College professors sat by and watched that happen. So I beg that where are the college people that are presenting a new world? Oyotunji presents the facet and idea of a different world than what we're used to. It may not be a new world, but at least it's an approach and it's a step in that direction. Colleges and universities fall in line to whatever the establishments they do and the corporations, and because they get their money from the corporations. Your money that you get to spend at the schools come from the government. It's called FAFSA or something like that. Well, I did try to enter college. I did try to enter what you call higher education, but they turned me down. You know, I wanted that FAFSA. I wanted that government money too. But, you know, they turned me down because my father was a revolutionary. My father said, no, you are not signing the collective services, or what is it, selective services. So I realized after I paid all of the tons of fees to the criminal university, I paid money after money after money for fees and fees and fees, and I get the financial aid, they say, no, you didn't sign the draft. So that told me that America was not out to educate people. This is not a democratic country. Oyotunji's form of education is democratic. We even allow the children to teach and teach us. You can't go to your university and do that. A democratic society allows for everyone to be educated. Where's the democracy in that? And so my father never sought to rejoin the foolish system. However, it's been proved positive that the young people have went on and empowered people in the university. So they go to the universities as professors already. So they enter the university at 18, and they're a professor in African psychology, African culture, African worldview, and they can look at African black people in the school and say, I could tell how you're acting. Here's a remedy for your action based on your ancestral culture. And so, yes, we do train to teach people to go on to higher learning.
Shay, I like that answer, brother. That was to the point. Hey, you broke it down. We teach them here. If they want to go to higher learning, they can, but they don't have to. But I got an inbox question. People want to know, can you be a Muslim? Can you be a Christian? Can you be Israelite, Hebrew, and still be a part of the Yoruba culture?
Could you rephrase that question, Baba? I'm sorry, you were breaking up.
People want to know, can you still be a Muslim or Israelite or a Christian and still be a part of the Yoruba culture?
Well, Israelism, Islam, and Christianity does not celebrate Africa. They do not celebrate our dress. They do not celebrate our language. They do not celebrate our mountains, our rivers, our forefathers, our foremothers. They celebrate the lands and the rivers and the mothers of their land. Mount Sinai, the Kaaba, Mecca. You never hear nothing about Africa unless they were taking something from Africa, or they were saying the blacks are the cursed people. All those religions are guilty for enslavement of Africans. Muslims and Christians all are guilty and continue to this day to pilfer Africa and take from Africa and rob and rape Africa. This is a fact of history. And I know this may not fall good on the ears of everybody, but we're not here to make things sound good. It is a fact of history. Go and do the study. And so those religions do not celebrate Africa. They don't celebrate the doom doom drum, the gong gong drum, the djembe. They just do not do that. They don't even venerate their own culture. You can go to any Muslim country and buy alcohol and find homosexuality. You go to an African country, it is banned, hands down. You go to Senegal. Senegal practices a different form of Islam than Arabia does. Arabia, you see all the pomp and circumstance and beauty and spending money in Qatar and Dubai. That's not Islam. That's overconsumption. Dubai, the star of the Muslim world, is really, as the Muslims call it, shaitan. That is against, that is haram. That is haram. And to enslave people to build your country is equal haram. Okay? So let's be truthful here when we talk about things. We really have to be truthful. We have to be so truthful that it hurts us to even hear it or talk about it. It hurts me to have to say this. However, it's the truth. Those religions and cultures do not care anything about Africa. The only thing they care is what they can get from Africa. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism has pilfered Africa from the first day any of those religions set foot in our holy land. And that's just a fact of history. And so if you're looking for something that deals with your DNA, your structural DNA, your dynamism, geographically structured and grafted for you, then you have to look back to West Africa, where we came from before we came to North America. You have to look back to your traditional culture. Everybody else do it except black people. You go to Nigeria, there are more Muslims and Christians than traditional. Although when they get in trouble, they turn to traditional religion in Africa. But when they got money and everything like that, they pay no attention. So if you go to China, all the traditional temples are beautiful. You go to Bhutan and Tibet and India, all the traditional temples are well kept and beautiful. You go to Africa, the mosques and the churches are all beautiful and laced with gold. The traditional temples are done. You understand that? So that means African people have been moving away and accepting everything import. Okay, when we are the original people, we were the ones that taught the world how to be civilized, if there was such a thing. So we have to get back to that. There is no power greater than the power of Africa, because the power of Africa produced everything. Islam, Judaism, Christianity are the children of Africa. Shintoism, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Greek mythology, Roman mythology are children of Africa. Those are babies when it comes to African tradition. Those are the children of Africa. So if you want to get into the conversation of superiority or what came first or what's the best, those are children of Africa, and then we start from there.
I see.
And we're speaking only facts of history here. One could only just go to history books and get the true knowledge, not books that are written by American writers or Christian writers or Muslim writers. There were people, observationists of the time, who wrote what they saw down on paper in vivid color. They did.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing I like about the village and the culture. It's the root, and I was taught to go to the root, and that is the root, and that's what attracts me.
Yes, Marcus Garvey said, "A tree without roots, a people without its culture is like a tree without roots." I'm sorry. A people without its culture is like a tree without roots. So if you ever see a tree without roots, there you go. You can see it.
My ancestors was taught that roots was bad.
Well, yes, roots was taught bad because when the black people used roots in South Carolina, they used roots against the oppressor. Okay, so when the oppressor found out that they had this African religion that they were practicing, they sought to stump it out completely. They stumped it out so completely Most Americans don't know who Shango, Yamanja, or Oshun is. But if you go to Cuba, Trinidad, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, where did I just come from? Canada. People there know about African tradition and religion. How is that? Why is that? Because the European slave masters of North America realized that when black people practiced their religion and their culture and played that drum, they revolted against the hogwash that they were trying to sell them or trying to enforce upon them or force upon them. Okay? So that is basically it in a nutshell. The African religion has supported the African and has been made bad by Europeans in Hollywood. Case in point, they didn't just make the religion bad, they made the people bad. They even demonized black people. They made us look like demons and evil people and the like. So they just didn't do it to our religion, they did it to our persona, our person, our face, our figure, our archetype. They demonized. And so when you read history, you know these things. There are white historians of universities that can tell you these things in private, you know. And there are all sorts of people that can tell you the same things we're telling you, which only leads a person, once they get this knowledge, it only leads them back to the source. So we have to go back to that which governed us before the plantation system governed us. And when we can understand that which governed us before the plantation system, then we can devise what the future can be for future generations. Otherwise, we continue the same cycle again, and it's continuing over and over and over again. Actually, it's getting worse. So they got a place called Chirac, Illinois. You know, that is what Chicago, Illinois has turned into, a murder field. And many cities have turned into the same thing. Why is that? It is because people are not relevantly educated. People are not taught human development. People are not taught about nature and the environment and the effect the environment has on you. Because if the universities were so smart, they would know that they would write documents and plead with government and powers to change the environment. How can you teach someone about psychology and then release them back into the foolishness? It seems like the people who know about psychology would be helping to do things in society, not just lip service, to help change the psychology, the prevailing dysfunctional psychology of America and the world for that matter. So they're doing us an injustice in that light. So, again, it is our African culture that gives us pointers to the future and what the future can be. Otherwise, begging and borrowing from foreign nations and foreign cultures, it's just not going to work. No people, and Dr. Clark said this, and I'll end with this, no people has ever liberated themselves using the culture, the religion, and the education of the oppressors. It's just never happened throughout history. The only way you can get a man off your back is to stand up straight. Ashed.
And I got to give a shout out to your father and the ancestors before him. I got to give a shout out to your father and the ancestors before him for doing what y'all. Can you hear me?
Ibao, Ashed.
Hello?
Yes, are we still coming through?
Yeah, I can hear you. We still live.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, we all still here.
But yeah, I just want to say thank you to you and your father and all the ancestors before him that did what y'all doing, because we really need this village, man, brother. And when I was there, I was so blown away, man. I feel like I lost 45 years of my life. It was somewhere I should have been.
And everyone, most black Americans have that experience when they come to Oyotunji, because what it is, it's not that Oyotunji is just a cool place and it looks cool and you feel great while you're here. No, this is an ancestral village. There are spirits that walk around here 24/7. And so when you come here, they're your ancestral spirits and they touch you. One finger or whatever they touch with, they touch you. When I came out today and I walked out, and the students who came to the village was already halfway in the gate. And they were halfway in the village just snapping pictures of everything. And when I walked out, I heard one of the young ladies say, "Where are we? What is this place? I love it." And they were dancing in the street because we were playing reggae music over here in the cafe. and they heard the music, and they was just dancing in the village road when I came out. Young people from Boston really never left the hood before. However, they came, and the ancestral spirit did the same thing it did to you. It touched them.
That's it. So I wanted to tell the brother earlier, he said he's going to try to drop by the village sometime. I want him to know that if you go in there, brother, it'd be hard to leave because the vibe is so beautiful.
I hear you.
Indeed. On the off day, the village is very quiet and serene and comes alive during festivals. We are open from 11 a.m. to 6 in the evening for visitors and also universities and schools and the like. And then we have festivals throughout the year. So if you go to oyotunji.org or oyotunji.org, there you can find the festival schedule, and you can be abreast as to our various events and happening in the Oyotunji village. And also, if you go to YouTube, your listeners can go to YouTube and see tons of videos there if they just search word Oyotunji or African Village in America.
The best place on YouTube for me was Inside Oyotunji.
Inside Oyotunji, yes.
Yeah, those were the best videos. She was in depth on everything. She every show was in depth, so it wasn't like she missed out on anything. It broke down so many parts of the village. I really was informed from watching Inside Oyotunji on YouTube.
Certainly. Well, we travel constantly and meet certain people, different people constantly. And so we decided that we would have a program that highlighted the happenings in the village and the surrounding cultural community. So, for instance, we're going to be traveling to Dallas September 6th for an ancestral braiding parade, ancestral hair braiding parade with Sister Isis. You can find her on Facebook at Isis Brantley. However, Erykah Badu is a part of that event, so it'll be a huge event in Dallas whereby we're going to take Egungun, we're going to take ancestral masquerades and imbue the community with a snapshot of African culture. And that's how it always starts. People see Egungun, or they see a speaker, or they see somebody dressed in African clothes. Next thing you know, they're on the path to reacculturation. And so that's how it works.
Yes, sir. Well, Brother Carl, do you have any questions?
Nah, I mean, I've been taking in all night, you know. Any questions I got, I go to the village and look around and get them answered.
All right, come on.
Well, I want to introduce Brother Carl to all my people on the phone. And this is Brother Carl. This is Brother Carl's show, Israel Doctrine. And he opened up his doors. And when I came to him and let him know about the village, he was enthusiastic on having you all on. And I just want to thank him for bringing us on and just explaining and giving us an outlet to let the people know about the Oyotunji village, the Yoruba culture, and, you know, really the root of where everything started from, Africa. A lot of people talk red, black, and green. They talk about getting back to Africa. But, I mean, it ain't that far to make a real start. A lot of people like to talk, but you ain't got to talk. You can come down here and live it. You can talk Africa, but if you're in that concrete jungle up there in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, wherever, you really not experiencing it because you have nothing but concrete and asphalt and all that around you. But when you come down to the country, to the south, in the Gullah Geechee Nation, from Jacksonville, North Carolina, down to Jacksonville, Florida, you can experience that feeling, man, and they don't even tell you about this culture down here. You got so many rebellions and so much stuff that happened between Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida, and you still have this culture right here, right now. Not even talking about Oyotunji village, but just the Gullah Geechee Nation itself, all the little islands and villages where black people still live today and speak with a African dialect and cook African foods and still
have our own African way of life right here in Southeast America, Southeast America, KKK. So I thank you, Brother Carl. You know, like we said in the beginning, Brother Carl is an Israelite, and his door is wide open, and he wants people to know, and he's always learning. That's why I respect you, brother. And I just want to thank you and let the guests on the show know who you are, and let you know how much I appreciate you opening up your doors to let me and my people come on here tonight and talk about this.
Oh, yeah, I wish I would have. No problem. I mean, most of the things you talked about, like I said, we spoke about social justice last week. And I know the term is kind of tricky sometimes, but all the principles and things we spoke about, I mean, pretty much everything you were saying, that's why I said, okay, I'm sitting back just taking notes and listening and see that there's others out there in the same spirit, even though we might not proclaim the same thing, you know, verbally for us titles or this, that, and the other, that at the same time it's the same spirit in those that's trying to see a change for quote-unquote black people, whatever byword or whatever, you know, national title or whatever one choose to take. So I know a lot of the audience that tuned in and listened last week, this, that, and the other, if they listen to this, they're going to say, okay, all right, it's an actual place where they do all these things, you know, community development, you know, developing the youth, cultivating the minds and the, you know, in the soul, as well as, you know, planting them spiritual and physical seeds and things of that nature. So it's just nice to know that people's out there putting in principles in order and manifesting them in the diaspora of America today. So, but look, y'all, it's been good. I don't think nobody else got anything else to say or ask. If you do, get it out now. You got about 20 minutes. So, if not, let's all say peace to each other, and hopefully we can see each other, talk to each other again whenever the time permits.
I say peace. Ashe Adupwe. We say Adupwe, which means thank you in the Yoruba dialect.
Okay, you're going to close it out like you said. You're going to...
Okay, well, we'll offer a closing incantation or prayer, if you will, in Yoruba. And we just ask your listeners or those on the line, just continue to say Ashe. Ashe means so shall it be. Okuo, okuo, esaijime, okuo, olumila, eleri, ipindikeji edumare, watojuwa, Ashe, olodumare, ipindikeji edumare, eleri, ipin, watojuwa, lonila, nalojojumo, Ashe, teki ori tutu, Ashe, teki ilera, Ashe, teki mo, Ashe, teki omo, Ashe, teki fowosowopo, Ashe, teki aiku, Ashe. So what we are asking is, we said, we ask the heavens and all those venerated spirits of heaven and God itself and the witness of destiny to be with us. The witness of destiny is the one who gives us our destiny and makes sure that we continue on that path. We ask them to be with us every day. We also ask for children. We also ask for wealth of children, wealth of money, wealth of house, wealth of wife, wealth of food, wealth of knowledge, wealth of ilera, which is longevity, wealth of oritutu, which is cool head. We ask for also the wealth of cooperation. And we say Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. Ashe means so shall it be. Edumare bewao, Ashe.
All right, peace to y'all till we can speak again.
Until next time.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. Thank you. Odabo.
Odabo.
Hello.
Hello.
know.
I got 2 free smartphones when I switched to Metro PCS.
One for him and one for me.